Can a TikTok mechanic swap a clutch as fast as a real mechanic? I have no idea, but we're gonna find out. Book time is about 5 hours at 150 bucks an hour to do this job on a 2005 Nissan 350Z at the dealer. Now, because I don't have a lift, I get 6 hours to knock out this challenge. If I can beat a real mechanic's time, I get to enjoy my new UniClutch in peace, and you guys have to call me a TikTok certified mechanic from now on. But if I fail, I have to set my fancy adjustable clutch pedal to the heaviest setting for a full week. And I have to rock this crappy eBay steering wheel cover on top of that. And I hate this thing. I ripped this off the car as soon as I got it. The last time I did this, the 5-hour job to swap the new transmission into my BMW ended up taking 5 days. Definitely got my work cut out for me. But this time we have something on our side. Experience. As little as it is, having dropped and swapped the transmission once, I feel like I am much more prepared to do it on this car. As you can see, our noob's guide to a transmission swap from working on the BMW, and the process will be just about the same on the Z. Good thing is, succeed or fail, we will get to test out this crazy new UniClutch Sport. Our knowledge should save us some time, and the fact that I need to get this done today should save us some time. With my jack in place, it's time to get this show on the road. Ready? 3, 2, 1, go! I'm off to the races, jacking the car up and setting the stands to their max height. With the backup set, of course, because contrary to popular belief, I don't enjoy hanging out underneath 3,000 pounds of Japanese metal. But by the time I'm ready to slide underneath, we've already used 25 minutes, so I need to kick it into high gear. You can see our wide pipe and flex pipes have seen better days. Exhaust has to go up to there. Then we can remove the drive shaft. Looks like you can just pull it out of the transmission. I also had 0 power tools when I did this swap on my BMW, so this new impact has me feeling extra confident. And 6 bolts later, the wide pipe's popping right out. I'm removing the 4 diff flange bolts, easy, and just rotating the drive shaft to get to the other side. Jesus. Gently remove it from the transmission, just coax it out here. This thing is really light. Okay, beautiful. All right, drive shaft is officially out. One sick thing about the 350Z, it's a carbon fiber drive shaft on a $30,000 entry-level budget sports car. And this is back when the car was designed in like 1999. You gotta give them respect where it's due. This is really cool. Do not hit, scratch, or drop. Next up, we're going to remove the shifter from inside the car, remove all the wiring from the transmission itself, then we should be ready to start pulling the bolts from the bell housing. But at 1 hour and 10 minutes, we are probably making not the best time, so let's hop right back in. It's always interesting when you come across small jobs that you've already accomplished on a big job like a clutch swap. In this case, it's an upgraded short shifter, but it's as simple as pulling up the center console, removing 4 10mm bolts, then the 2 rubber boots covering the socket. I'm removing these 3 hex bolts so I can slide underneath the car to remove the 12mm bolt that connects the bottom of the shifter to the linkage itself. And with that, the shifter's out and it's still looking good. Next up, we need to remove all of the wiring that is attached to the transmission. Our O2 sensors right here, disconnect these, make sure that we remember which side goes to what. Some more just sensors and whatnot. I'm slightly intimidated because I have no idea what I'm doing, but as I'm unplugging things, the way the harness is routed is starting to make a lot more sense. It runs around the back of the transmission to a plug on the top driver's side that can only be reached with a screwdriver. I'm tracing it back from there, removing 10mm bolts and brackets or plastic snaps depending on which is more accessible. But I'm replacing all the bolts in their holes so they're easy to find when I reassemble this thing. So I've got the entire harness released and off to the side along with the slave cylinder. Last thing to do is drop this brace. All right, I've got everything disconnected from the transmission and it's finally time to remove the bell housing bolts and drop this thing. But to make things extremely easy, we need a piece of cardboard and a Sharpie. There are all kinds of different bolt sizes and we're gonna make it really easy to remember exactly where they go. There are 4 bolts at the top of the engine, and as we pull the other bolts out, stick them into our template, and that way when we go to reinstall everything, it'll be extremely organized and simple. My goal is to have the transmission out of the car at the halfway mark, so if we can do that, I think we'll be in a good spot. If these bolts put up any fight like they did last time, this is a make or break moment for our challenge. But the 2 17s for the starter are coming off pretty easily. There are 2 14s and a 10 at the bottom of the transmission that I can only access with a wrench, but thankfully those are coming out pretty easy too. There's 3 bolts left on the driver's side, including this weird threaded bracket, but thankfully my template's making it really easy to remember the exact orientation it's going to go back in. Now for the last 4 bolts at the top of the bell housing, you're going to be getting a little intimate with your engine. You grab your 17s, a breaker bar, and a 10mm, and get comfortable because you are crawling on top of the intake plenum itself and just slide on so you can see what you're doing back here. Now, having access to the bolts from above is a huge advantage compared to our last challenge, but that doesn't mean it's going to be much faster for a first timer like me. I'm pulling the two 10mm holding this engine harness bracket in place to gain enough clearance to remove everything else. So now that I can see what I'm doing, I'm cracking loose the remaining 4 bolts and pulling them one by one. I'm taking note of this transmission breather tube that mounts onto one of the bolts so I can remember exactly where it goes when we reassemble everything, hopefully in the next few minutes. Oh my god, I can't get this last one and I'm running out of time. Yep, that's the blank stare of a true car enthusiast.
I do not want to put that thing on my car.
Nice. How much time is left? Actually, let's just drop the trans and hope that we're at least ahead of our halfway point. Time to roll out the big guns. This is it, the moment of truth. Everything hinges on this transmission releasing from the block like butter. If it's seized in place or I damage something on the way out, beating a 6-hour challenge is going to be the least of my problems. The fluid will pour out of the back. Stick some paper towels to prevent a ton of it from dripping out on the floor. Transmission fluid diaper is officially on. So now ratchet this trans jack up, support it from the mid back, and then we're gonna undo the transmission cross member. 413, just gonna loosen them. Make sure the trans jack is supporting it completely. Lower it slightly, pull back. So far so good, but it's not popping right off like I was expecting. Or we could grab a pry bar. I think I might try the ratchet strap. With every second that's passing, my anxiety levels are shooting through the roof. And if this last trick up my sleeve doesn't break it free, I think we're officially screwed. It's been almost an hour since that last bell housing bolt actually came out of the block. You'd think that with 100,000 less miles, this transmission would come off a little easier than it did on the BMW, but at this point, actually removing the transmission from the block is the thing that is killing me in these challenges. I can hear that steering wheel cover laughing at me in the corner as we speak. I've tried the ratchet strap technique. This transmission is larger and heavier than the BMW's, and I'm pretty sure a huge part of this is my jack stands, as nice as they are, let the car wobble way too much. It makes me extremely uncomfortable to put any real force into the transmission shaking it because the whole car shakes above me. So yes, I have backup stands, but I might have to address that. But we're not gonna give up. We still have about 2 hours to go. If we can get this transmission off in the next 10, 20 minutes, we might still have a chance. I've got good news and bad news. The good news is I think I found my problem. What's that? Oh, it's a bolt right behind where the starter mounts. On the back side too. I think it's gonna pop right off after I get that. So with all the bolts officially out of the transmission, I can finally see daylight. The ratchet strap is performing brilliantly, and I honestly think I would have broken something without the help of this transmission jack. But things would be going a little too well if I didn't run into a slight problem immediately. Our fancy new trans jack does not go low enough to get the transmission out from another car. So we're gonna have to get it off the trans jack onto the floor and then drag it out. Oh boy. But with the transmission officially out of the way, we can finally lay eyes on our arch nemesis, the stock clutch. But there's no time to stare, so I'm zapping off the 9 clutch cover bolts and taking note of how toasted my flywheel looks. Oh yeah, but that bad news that I mentioned earlier, it's about to hit me like a brick. Well, it's out, and I did it faster than the last time, but the chances of me doing the clutch and getting this back in the car in an hour and 10 minutes are pretty slim. But we're still gonna try. Honestly, even though our challenge is looking grim, I'm still proud of myself for even getting to this point in the first place. This is my first sports car, and experiences just like this are exactly how I've learned how they work and how to make them better. But we've come a long way from installing that 380 RS gas pedal that I got for Christmas years ago. So why am I even going through all this trouble anyways? It's because this UniClutch has managed to take all of the advantages of a twin disc clutch and basically eliminated all the drawbacks. Let me explain. Your typical stock clutch comes with a single disc that is squeezed between your flywheel and the pressure plate. Those two constantly spin with your motor's crankshaft. And friction is what transfers that power from the clutch disc to the input shaft of the transmission. Technically, the pressure plate sits inside like that. And your clutch pedal pushes your throwout bearing. As you add force to these fingers, it releases pressure from the clutch itself. Say a TikToker is building a 1,000 horsepower Monster Z. UniClutch Sport can handle up to 800 foot-pounds of torque, but where a traditional twin plate clutch would also have a ton of chatter and have a really heavy pedal feel, you could toss the same 800 foot-pound clutch into a stock Z and have the same drivability as the stock clutch. They've got anti-rattle technology that keeps the twin plates as quiet as stock. The extra surface area in a twin plate UniClutch should last longer than a stock clutch. The UniClutch will take less pedal pressure than the stock setup to switch gears. They've also built in 70 degrees of shock absorption, helps make engagement extremely smooth, even in high horsepower builds. But honestly, the coolest thing is this one clutch unit can fit thousands of different types of vehicles. All you have to do is change out a modular spline to the proper one that fits your car. Traditionally, the spline is a part of the clutch itself. As someone who's literally never installed a clutch before in my life, the fact that this is a sealed unit and the friction surfaces are all contained inside the clutch itself. So you don't have to resurface the flywheel at all. Don't need a clutch alignment tool or anything. And because they're modular parts, they're actually able to pass on some of the savings to you because manufacturing all the different fitment kits is way simpler than it is to customize every single clutch unit to each application. This thing looks legit and feels legit too. It's just a really cool product. It's basically innovating in a space where there hasn't been much of that for decades. And regardless of whether or not I can beat our challenge, we'll still get to see if this lives up to the hype. So that's great and all, but I've got an hour and 10 minutes left. So how do I get this in the car? I can see all of the information specific to my personal clutch. Torque capacity 905 foot-pounds. Underrated. Dude, that's ridiculous. Within the fitment kit, we have a QR code that'll give you the exact instructions you need for your car. I'm grabbing the spline adapter that fits my input shaft, then dropping it into place in the UniClutch and locking it down with the snap ring. The full-colored, poster-sized instructions are reminding me of building Lego models back in the day. But now it's time to set up the adapter ring. It comes with spacers to match your UniClutch to OEM specs, but in the Z's case, it calls to be mounted flush. The pre-applied thread locker on the bolts is a nice touch, so I'm setting the fitment ring in the grooves and snugging them up, then torquing them down to 11 foot-pounds per the manual. Back under the car, I'm lining up the dowels on the stock flywheel with the corresponding letters on the fitment ring. I'm snugging up the original bolts from the stock clutch cover. And we torque to 25 per OEM specs. And that's it. UniClutch installed. And it's time to finish this job. So that took just about 10 minutes to get the clutch set up and installed in the car, which is pretty good. That leaves us with just over an hour to complete our challenge and get the car back on the ground running within book time. At this point, it might as well just be a race to beat our personal best. Giving up so soon? Seriously? All hope is not lost. What could you possibly do to make this go faster? I want you to take this. I don't feel like I've earned this, but I'll do my best to bring honor to the uniform. And remember, you are the hustle. Okay. New quest. Can a TikTok mechanic install a transmission in 1 hour? But first, we've got to show it some love. So I'm figuring out how to disconnect this little throwout bearing and sleeve. Ooh, that was bad. Before cleaning out the entire bell housing with some brake cleaner and a rag. I'm carefully pressing the new bearing onto the new sleeve before being extremely grateful that I found a packet of the right lube in my fitment kit. But now that I've lightly greased all the right surfaces, the throwout bearing and clutch fork are working perfectly. So it's finally time to put this thing back where it belongs. Unfortunately, lifting a 125-pound transmission onto a jack with like a foot of clearance is a little bit harder than getting it off of said jack. But with enough blocks of wood and angles tested, I'm finally able to get it back in the proper spot. But of course, in the process, brought us down to the final seconds of our challenge. So now I'm starting up a timer because while we may have lost the fight, we're still setting a new personal best. Unless realigning and mating up the transmission, installing and torquing down the bolts, remembering and reattaching all the wires, brackets, and plugs, and reinstalling the shifter takes about 4 days. Or if this happens. It's been almost an hour of me looking for a single bolt that has just disappeared off of the face of the earth. At this point, it's not a matter of time. It's a matter of, will I get this car on the ground before I go to sleep? Thankfully, I happened to find something in my spare bolts drawer that I think will work until I can get a new one. So we're just gonna send it. But with the final bolt installed and the tires back on the ground, our clutch swap is officially complete. Assuming the car still starts and I didn't plug anything in backwards, all that's left to do is to take it for its first spin. So I just finished the 300-mile break-in period for the clutch. But how does it stack up? Does it live up to the claims? I'm happy to report that the answer to that is an emphatic yes. Do you hear any crazy rattles at idle? Because I don't. Is taking off from a stop easier than stock? Yes. Can I drop the clutch when shifting and it just eats it up like nothing? Literally just drop the clutch on that 2 to 3 shift. I will say it's way smoother than it was stock, that's for sure. It's crazy how this is a daily drivable upgrade over stock that also can kill it at the track. Honestly, I think this might be the perfect clutch for drifters. Even if you have a lower powered car, this is probably it. Smooth engagement at high RPM shifts and getting off the line. But even then, the clutch material, you can feel how it wants to grab, but there's just enough shock absorption to make it it's a really progressive, really nice feel. And the pedal is lighter than stock. I was extremely surprised at how light and nice it felt, to the point where even if I do adjust my pedal to be heavier, I think it's still gonna be lighter than the stock clutch, which is crazy. Well, that's another successful job in the books. With our final time of 10 hours, we set a new personal best for anything transmission swap related. So I'm pretty happy with that. I mean, you can't ask for much more than improving every time you do something. So what did we learn? Make sure you know how many bolts actually have to be removed. That would have saved me like an hour. And make sure you have all the right tools that you're gonna need to gain access to, hard to reach bolts. If you don't have a lift, get yourself as much clearance as possible. So in the future, I will absolutely have taller jack stands. We lost almost an hour just trying to lift the transmission back onto the trans jack underneath the car. But overall, I'm extremely happy with the way the UniClutch has turned out. It works with almost any flywheel or transmission setup. So the link will be in the description if you want to learn more. I'm going to keep you guys updated on how this UniClutch performs over time, as well as taking it out to the track. I'll be able to take full advantage when I'm running the car at 10/10. So hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more, because I got some crazy stuff coming you guys are not going to want to miss. But we still have one question to answer. Will it do a burnout? Yes, it will. I wonder if installing this is harder than installing the clutch. This is gross. Are you satisfied?